Illinois state lawmakers ended the veto session this week by pushing through legislation that will send the state in a new direction in energy production. They agreed to end the moratorium on building new nuclear power plants. It's been in place since 1987. Now, this clears the way for construction of smaller nuclear reactors. Lawmakers overwhelmingly adopted a similar measure in the spring, only to have Governor J.B. Pritzker veto it. At the time, the governor said there were loopholes that would have made it possible to build larger reactors. Lawmakers and the governor worked out the differences to put in specific language that limits the size. The Senate passed it Wednesday. It cleared the House on Thursday. Governor Pritzker still has the power to veto it because it's technically a new bill. However, all indications are he will sign it after being part of those talks. And that's despite opposition from environmental groups worried about the overall safety of nuclear power and the disposal of nuclear waste specifically. Now, it will take a while before any new plants could be built. Getting rid of the moratorium on building nuclear power plants signals a big shift in Illinois policy. State lawmakers didn't give up on it after the governor's veto. One of those who supports lifting the moratorium with these restrictions is State Senator Mike Halpin of Rock Island County. He joins us now by Zoom from Springfield. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
There are more defined limits with this legislation. Why is this the right time to lift the moratorium on nuclear power plants?
So I think what we're seeing is an increased effort at new technologies in designing nuclear reactors that aren't the large type of reactors like we have in the Quad Cities and Cordova, and focus on more site-specific small nuclear reactors, or modular reactors. And the technology isn't quite here yet, but I think we need to position ourselves as a state looking to do that research so that we can provide a bridge as we phase out our fossil fuels energy production and transition to our renewable sources. So I think it's just foresight and really thinking about the future and being prepared for the possibilities that may or may not come up over the next decade.
I know you're not a scientist, and you said it's not here, the technology's not here yet, but do you have any idea how soon we might be able to see something like this?
No, it's hard for me to say. But again, the goal is to have this in place so that as companies start to develop these and have more concrete plans and concrete technology, they know that Illinois is a place that is a possibility for them to locate. It's a good way to bring that business, bring jobs, and make sure that we're providing sufficient energy for our residents.
Now, when groups like the Sierra Club still oppose this, how do you convince environmentalists concerned about nuclear waste that this can be done safely?
I think that question is always going to be open, and I think we need to make sure that the technology is as safe as possible. But I do know that we are seeing the immediate effects of climate change now, and the carbon dioxide waste that we've been pumping into the air for decades. That's a concern right now, and we're rightfully phasing out coal. We're phasing out dirtier fuels. And this needs to be a replacement, at least part of the solution, because the data suggests that wind and solar alone aren't going to necessarily provide in the immediate future all of our energy needs. So I think we have to be open to this. We make it as safe as we possibly can, while still making sure we have enough energy for our needs.
What guidelines will there be about where these plants could actually be built? Would there be any kind of limit on the number at some point?
Yeah, I think that's going to be future legislation. Right now, we're just lifting the moratorium or the ban on even considering locating. If a project like this is going to occur, my educated guess and my sense is that we're going to be back in the General Assembly discussing that issue and working out details on the siting.
Do you have a preference on what kind of limit there should be?
No, again, it's not an issue that we've really considered. Personally, I will leave that up to the discussion that we have. I think it's a little premature to decide on specific limits. It depends on what type of technology it is, how much energy it produces, how much waste it produces. There's a lot of technical details that I think it would be premature to prejudge a limit on.
There are also issues brought up during the veto session that don't look like they're getting done. One of those is that proposal to extend the Invest in Kids tax credit program. The state spends $75 million a year on scholarships to send kids to private schools. It's on schedule to expire at the end of the year. One idea to save it would be reducing that money allocated to it. Why isn't there support for it?
I can't speak for all my colleagues, but for me, I believe that the money we spend in that tax credit is better used in our public sector schools, our K through 12 education. We have, as part of the evidence-based formula, a $50 million property tax relief fund that each and every year gets wiped out with good reason, because schools are agreeing to take that money from that fund in exchange for lowering their property taxes. But that $50 million doesn't meet all the need. So my preference would be to spend some of that $75 million used on this program and putting that into our local communities to give them an option to get additional state money in exchange for lowering property taxes. I think that's a better investment on the whole, and I'm looking forward to making that proposal as this sunsets next year.
What about kids who might be coming from disadvantaged situations and don't have access to good public schools, who have relied on these scholarships, and they see this money going away? What do you say to them?
Well, money for scholarships are still going to be there. The only program that's ending is the tax credit in receipt for those donations. And I have not seen the data that says that money isn't going to be given to our local schools for scholarships if this tax credit is in existence. And it's my hope that the donors that do contribute to these schools to offer scholarships will continue to do so, even if they're not getting a specific tax credit for it.
One more issue before we go. Democrats, we know, typically have the backs of unions, especially in Illinois. But a proposal to let legislative staffers form a union doesn't seem to be going anywhere this session and the veto session. Where do you stand?
I believe every worker in the state of Illinois deserves the right to collectively bargain. I know the House has passed a proposal. That's my understanding that we are looking at it here in the Senate. It's not something I think we'll be taking action on in veto session, but look forward to those discussions as we head into the spring again.
It has stalled in the Senate, so is it something you support, and do you think it has a chance of becoming a law that the legislative staffers will be able to unionize?
Yeah, so I've taken a brief look at the House version. I'm not sure if there is, I wouldn't say it was 100% in support. We haven't taken it up. Obviously, this nuclear moratorium bill, some of the other local legislation, including a bill on adjusting farm mutual insurance, has kind of taken a little bit more precedence for me. I do believe that this is something that we can, it's not completely time sensitive. It's something that we'll look forward to in the spring. But I think there's more details that need to be worked out in it.
I mean, I guess the case some people might say is like, this is probably a relatively small group. Why do they need to unionize in the first place, taking out the counter position?
So in my opinion, it's not for an employer to ask necessarily why their employees want to unionize or not. It is a decision and a right for the employees themselves to make that decision. I don't know that they need a particular reason why. I support workers in their own decisions. And so that's a question for the employees and whether or not they decide if they want to band together and form a union.
Senator Mike Halpin, thanks for the conversation. Good luck as always with everything in Springfield.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.